Okay, thank you, Frank. We'll now open it up to questions. Woody.
Jill, I was delighted with two major things that you said. One was this public science. I think that to be very profitable. It's very scary for all of us, as you well know, but it's exciting, and I think SETI really fits into its model very well. SETI at home, of course, has shown the tremendous interest. This is just taking that one step further, where a person would not just be passively renting their CPU cycles for nothing, but now would be being hired for nothing. So that is great. And then I was even more delighted, because this is what I wanted to say this morning, to see your nice graphic here, because I think this is a mistake that SETI has made, is that it has not embraced astrobiology. So my take, with both historians hat on and SETIites hat on, is that SETI has pioneered the way excruciatingly over decade by decade, as Frank knows best, of getting more and more acceptability in the community, as we showed in those sequence of decadal reports. And then that made it so much easier for astrobiology to not have to fight those battles. Once you had the exoplanets and Europa and the extremophiles and so forth, these various things coming in from different disciplines, and astrobiology has prospered. Now, it still suffers somewhat from what SETI has suffered from over the years of, the field that has not demonstrated that the subject matter exists. That's the knock. But the more serious look at it is that, independent of any success, that we learn all this about the origin of life, about evolution of life, about what intelligence is, about the nature of life. Is evolution necessary for life? Weird life. All these things are fascinating, independent of ever finding microbes on Mars. And that's all in the back of everyone's mind. But see, SETI's not that way. When you don't find the signal, it's much more, well, we haven't got anything. But it fits into astrobiology. And I think that's the train that it should ride with in the next 50 years.
We got pushed off the train.
Yeah, let me reply to that, because the SETI Institute is also a very large astrobiology
Absolutely, and I think it should be called the Astrobiology Institute.
Well, there could be a name change in the future somewhere for the institute. It's going to be discussed.
I know, but I think that's part of the mistake, right?
But my reply to that would be, that's another way of mainstreaming the science of SETI. Just as Jill said, within radio astronomy, what we're trying to do with the Allen Telescope Array, within the SETI Institute, we also wanted to mainstream it and place it in this bigger picture. I think at that level we've been very successful. That has not derived money. And in fact, I would add there's another parallel in that Jill was, and the SETI Institute was key in the very early pushing for a square kilometer array, which now has tremendous legs. But that also didn't derive money, tremendous legs worldwide at least. The US is not investing a lot. That likewise did not derive money for SETI. It got good things going, and we're proud of that. John.
This conference has basically been American researchers. SETI used to be much more international activity. I don't know what's happening so much in other countries. I was in China last month at the Beijing Planetarium, where I was talking about the Voyager record in SETI, and there was a tremendous amount of interest. And they've got a lot of money. So I wonder to what extent you've tried to foster more international cooperation, especially among Asian countries that are flush with money.
Well, I can speak for our group. Our group has actually met with representatives from FAST and their DSP team and talked to them about instruments and about SETI. And indeed, they are very excited about SETI, and they would like to do it on that telescope in particular, FAST. And so I agree. I mean, I think that SETI is very much an international effort, and I think that there is a lot of interest out there. And I think that, one of the most important things is really to get the sort of the cost of the instruments and the complexity of the instruments down, so that it's not a $5 million project to implement a SETI spectrometer, on another telescope, but a $50,000 project.
Okay.
A comment to both Frank and Jill. Frank, you pointed out that
difficult to get so it wouldn't be useful to get a PhD in SETI because you don't have any results. What do you do next? But doesn't the same thing apply to a postdoc? You spend 3 years as a postdoc doing SETI, you don't have any results. What happens to the rest of your life?
You cross your fingers and hope that there are jobs in SETI waiting.
So isn't the most likely or practical approach to do as you've done, and Mike, and myself, Paul, and others, it's part-time.
Yeah, that's,
You have to have a secure career and job,
Yes.
and then you can do SETI part-time.
yeah, the right way to do it is, as we have done it, is to do traditional radio astronomy, and then on the side, carve out enough time to do SETI. There's an additional advantage from this, which is what you know. If you're doing a project all the time that never produces results, it's not, doesn't encourage you and does not motivate you. You want to be doing something that's producing results. So the right way to do SETI is to have normal, if you want to call them that, traditional radio astronomy projects where you really get data, and then do SETI, and you will stay motivated. You'll also stay up to date on the equipment and the data processing things and all.
Paul?
I just make a comment. You know, since I've pushed 4 graduate students through and have a 5th one going through, these guys, except for Weintraub, were specifically SETI, but they were designing new stuff, building telescopes and so on. They've all been snatched up immediately after graduation.
By what?
By multiple people. Andrew had 2. He could work with Charbonneau or with Marcy. Weintraub went up with the SMA, and now he says, I'm an astronomer now, and he's doing the Event Horizon stuff with the...
Yeah, but they're not in SETI.
Right, that's the bad
That's
news.
the problem,
But
that's the
that's the
problem.
bad news, but the
Yeah.
good news is you can have graduate students doing SETI, and if they do it at the hands-on level, they're incredibly valuable people because they really know how to do a whole system.
Yeah, that's
Jill?
what's been missing from this discussion.
Jill, I think Jill has a counterpoint to,
Yeah, I don't buy this do SETI part-time, Ken. It's saying that it doesn't have value. It's really saying, you know, second class, right? There is so much to do in SETI. There is so much innovation that SETI has brought forward in terms of instrumentation that even without a positive detection, I think there's a lot of satisfaction. And, you know, again, there is, if you're like me and you're a Pollyanna, it's something that can actually help to change the world. And I think that's worth doing 100% time.
I think, let me start backing up just a little bit and then return to that. More important than building public support, you really need to build support through the astronomy community. And you've got to make the astronomy community feel like SETI is not competing for resources with their own thing. I think, I agree, it's really got to start part-time. I couldn't, postdoc, you're not going to get a job. If you get a job as an assistant professor, you're not going to get grants doing SETI. You're not going to get tenure. It's just a gloomy prospect. I couldn't recommend a graduate student to follow that thing. The other thing is, you're making the ATA so it's a radio instrument for other people to use. But other people in the astronomy community need to feel that SETI is something that they can do part-time. I really think it's got to be something other than competing, for the resources which are really terribly, terribly short. Frank was pointing out, everybody's fighting for the money. Everybody's fighting for little grants. The people who've been successful in SETI and who do SETI are all hardware-oriented. I mean, booming areas in astronomy are where you can do things that aren't hardware oriented, even if you have some feeling for hardware, and where you can get grant money. Nobody is going to, you can't survive outside an institute without grant money.
over here.
I'd like to to second that opinion. As an assistant professor and looking at what draws students to join a research group in anything related to origin of life or SETI-related research, students want to join a group where they can get publications because that will get them a postdoc position. They want a postdoc position where they can get publications because that's what will get them a faculty position. But the only thing that will get you a faculty position is a research proposal that can be funded through federal grants. And if you don't have that in your research proposal when you're applying for faculty positions, you won't be able to find a faculty position. So this is really a challenge. I don't know where to turn for funding for a SETI project. You know, I apply to many of the NASA programs, but you always have to put a spin on the science with something that's got a fundamental application in some other area to be able to get it funded so that you can even think about doing this type of research.
Thank you for that comment, and that's what this slide's all about from my perspective, and I think that's a fundamental problem that needs to be fixed, and there's only one way it gets fixed, is by the peer community. And it's a true fundamental problem. If you really want to expand it and have a room full of strong leaders 25 years from now, while the gray-haired leaders are watching from their rocking chairs,
Hopefully.
Hopefully, you know, I think that's so correct. Probably we've got time for 3 more questions. Catherine.
I was just thinking about targeting folks who are already in a tenured position and creating visiting fellowships for a year or 2 years, something like that, so that they can, you know, so they're working from a position of security. They can take the risk. And moreover, they're already in a position where they're starting to make major funding decisions, you know, through collegial councils and things like that. So if you want to be shifting the decision-making structure in terms of, you know, where's the money ultimately going to come from, then you need to be shifting the structure at the higher levels of the academic departments, surely. And in order to do that, I mean, your own best ambassadors, because, I mean, you know, having people come out to the SETI Institute for a year or 2, it's a magnificent learning environment. It's great for sabbaticals. I was taking, you know, thoughts from what Paul was saying about how he got into it. So, I mean, it doesn't, I understand that you've got a training issue, but you've got to go higher as well.
Any comments from Tom?
Yeah, what got Paul was NASA funding so that he could take a sabbatical and have a visiting fellowship with us. And so it's the chicken and the egg. Where do we find, yes, it's a great idea, we should do it, and for all the reasons you said, but where does the funding base come to enable that opportunity?
Dan will be last, and Lynn will take Lynn from the biology profession. What's your perspective? Help us.
Well, the brilliant thing is I agree with almost every comment that's come before, so that takes away a lot of what I need to worry about. But the concern about doing SETI part-time, SETI's very interdisciplinary, just like astrobiology. I don't have a job in astrobiology. Believe it or not, I was hired as a cell biologist, and my NASA paperwork says I'm a physical chemist. I don't know where they got those words from. I tried changing for 14 years. But the point is that it's not an embarrassment, and I think actually, I always argue that's why you have things like AbSciCon every other year, because it's so important to stay up in your own field and not be accused of being a dilettante. And although SETI doesn't have to deal with quite as many fields, I would say that there's a similar sort of situation there. So I don't see any problem with that. But my point really is more that I think the problem is, you know, for federal dollars or interest or anything, it's a time scale. If you found a signal this morning, you would have more money than you knew what to do with by tomorrow morning. But if you say, well, it's somewhere in the future, you're sort of getting into a DARPA type of science. Well, it's very high payoff, but it's incredibly high risk. And so maybe the way to deal with that is you set up a roadmap so that you have near-term achievable goals. So you're always progressing towards it rather than always just simply going for this galactic home run. So that's my suggestion.
That's really good advice. Maybe we have time for 2 more questions. So Dan, you had one, I think. So.
Oh, I just had a comment about trying to raise money. So the bulk of our money is coming from National Science Foundation. We do have some NASA grants, but about 2/3 of it comes from NSF. And NSF has been pretty good. They fund, well, about half of our proposals get funded. And NASA's a little worse. Maybe 1/3 of our proposals get funded, but we don't get as much money from NASA. So try NSF.
It's a two-sided problem, though, because you also have to convince a hiring committee in an astronomy department or a chemistry department or a biology department that the science will get funded even before you have a chance to prove that it can. And so that's the real challenge, is communicating the research in such a way that scientists who aren't familiar with the SETI program are convinced that it is fundable. So it's a challenge. You have to get the faculty position before you have to worry about getting the funding.
And you guys have such a leg up because of your incredible innovation record. I mean, you really have led the world, not even the country, the world in some of your innovation.
There's so much study that can be done. You know, we look at little wavelengths here and there, and if you just want here at Green Bank, you could look at all kinds of frequencies, and you could do all kinds of wonderful stuff. And I would encourage people to, if they want to do SETI, send a proposal to NSF.
Last question from the planetary science community, Mark.
Well, thanks. From my point of view as a pretty young guy in the room, I went into SETI. Searching for habitable terrestrial planets is SETI. And there are lots of people my age and younger who are interested in that, and I consider that a success of this group.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I will close this session with a quote from Frank Drake. 1992, NASA had just begun its SETI search. I can't imagine but what his words are actually even more true today. For those on the webcast who might not be able to read this, I'll read it for Frank. The silence we have heard so far is not in any way significant. We still have not looked long enough or hard enough. We've not explored a large enough chunk of the cosmic haystack. The lesson we have learned from all our previous searching is that the greatest discovery is not a simple one to make. And I think we all have Frank to thank for starting this profession 50 years ago, and Frank, everyone in the room is going to do their damnedest to make the next 50 years successful, so thank you.